I'm late for the show. Okay. Yeah. I'm on my way. Hello, and this is episode 1 of Let's Talk Movies. Coming up on today's show, I'm going to be talking about last year's summer blockbuster, Man of Steel. I'm also going to be talking about Marvel vs. DC in the cinema, and I'm going to be making a few recommendations of my own. So, without any further ado, let's hit that funky bass, and let's start the show. So, episode 1 of Let's Talk Movies, and I'm going to be talking about last summer's blockbuster, Man of Steel. Why Man of Steel? Well, I wanted to kick off the show with something big, and in fairness, Man of Steel was a pretty big film. And it's not going to spoil anything, really, for anybody watching this. Any spoilers that I may leak out. I think it's been long enough that I can actually talk about the film without giving anything away that you don't already know about. So let's kick off. My first reaction after seeing the film, I can remember clearly. I came out of the cinema and I had a sense of contentment. I wasn't happy, I was satisfied, but not excited about the movie I just watched. I had problems with the film from the get-go, but the problems mainly stemmed from the first half of the movie. It didn't come really from the second half, because, let's face it, there wasn't a lot of story going on in the second half. It was mainly carnage. It was mainly the first half of the movie, all the Krypton stuff. I liked the fact that they rebooted it. I liked the fact that they give us a new version of Krypton. All of this stuff I thought was very, very good. It was a little bit John Carter of Mars. Good film, by the way. Totally underrated. But it really and truly, the logic being used by the Kryptonians, they didn't seem higher ups. They didn't seem more advanced. They actually seemed more medieval, and I think maybe that's what they were trying to go for, but their reasoning was a little bit more medieval as well, and I kind of thought that took them down a peg. And I didn't like my Kryptonians taking down a peg. I kind of like the Kryptonians a bit higher up, actually being a bit more snooty, I think, because that's just the way I think that Kryptonians are. Anyway, let's get back to talking about the movie. The movie starts out, and I felt that the first half of the movie, the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie was rushed. There was a lot going on, too much going on. There was stuff happening in the scenes that were confusing to stuff that was happening in the scenes before it or the scenes after it. I didn't like the fact that they were asking us to believe that Jor-El could be a super scientist and part ninja, it would seem. The guy, I can believe, could hold his own in a contest of wits, but up against people who are genetically bred for war, not so much. I would assume that Jor-El could have outthought them, but outfought them? No. I mean, what you're asking me to believe is that Professor Brian Cox could beat the crap out of a group of Navy SEALs. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I mean, I could believe that he could come up with something that could help defeat them, but outfight them, outbox them, outkick them? Nah, I'm sorry, no. And then you got Jor-El, who is telling the council that Krypton's doomed, and even though they could save people, he's not going to bother. Yeah, he's not even going to try. No, everybody's dead, tough luck, I'm going to sit on my hands. Anytime you've got a character that could save the lives of billions of people, and doesn't, that makes them a dick. So Jor-El is essentially a dick. The council, they're dicks. They're all dicks. The only person who has any form of sense in this movie seems to be Zod, who we're told is a monster. He comes bursting through the door, he kills 4 or 5 people, and Jor-El naturally calls him a monster. Okay, I'm on his side. I'm on Zod's side right now, because first of all, I haven't seen enough of what the backstory of what's going on to really say the guy's a monster. I haven't seen him do anything, and the only thing I'm hearing is that he's trying to save the planet. In any other movie, this guy would be the hero of the piece. He would be your Luke Skywalker. He would be the person who would ultimately topple the oppressive government. In this movie, they tell us he's a monster. It would have been nice if they had given us 2 movies previous to Man of Steel. It would have been nice if they had given us 2 prequels to this. Jor-El of Krypton Part 1 and Part 2, and then they could have told us all the story. And it would have been something new, fresh and different from DC. We would have actually had a good story, a good sci-fi romp. We'd have also had everything that we needed to know going into this movie. We'd have known everything about Zod, we'd have known everything about Krypton, we'd have known everything about the culture, and we would have known a lot more of why they couldn't save themselves. As it is, it just seems like, well, they're not going to bother, they're not going to try. Moving along. Let's move on further into the story. Not that far into the story, actually, because there's a bone I have to pick with Lara's phone call. Yes, Jor-El phones up Lara, she answers the phone, and she instantly says, "Jor-El, look out behind you." Does anybody else think, how the hell does she know there's anything wrong? I mean, she answers the phone, "Look out behind you," because there's a couple of Kryptonian guard behind him. She doesn't know that they're chasing him. She doesn't know they're after him. She doesn't even know there's anything wrong. Maybe Lara's just got an OCD. Maybe she always answers the phone with, "Jor-El, look out behind you." If so, maybe she should see somebody about getting it fixed. But there we are, that's a little trivial thing, but it is something that actually caught my attention whilst I was watching the movie. So, Jor-El tells us that Zod is a monster because he's trying to save the planet, and I don't want to keep going over it, but as I've already established, I think Jor-El is a dick. He then tells Zod that he and Lara have had a baby boy. They've had Krypton's first natural birth in centuries. And the reason why he wanted to do that was because he wanted to get away from the genetically engineered, genetically grown. He wanted something pure, something new, something different. Then he does this. "We've had a child, Zod. Krypton's first natural birth in centuries. My wife went through 9 months of pregnancy, weird cravings, morning sickness, natural labour pains, natural childbirth, no epidural, all so that we could have a natural born baby, which I'm going to make pointless by mutating the crap out of him as I infest his body with the codec of 1 billion Kryptonians." Yep, he did. He mutated the crap out of a newborn baby. What a knob. What a complete spanner. Anytime you take a newborn baby and you do that to it, you are a complete and utter douche. Douche is a good word. There we are. Douche. He's a douche. So, let's move on. Things happen. Krypton goes boom. We see the ship heading towards Earth, and the next thing you know, we're on the sailing ship. This entire part of the movie is completely out of order. I didn't like the flashbacks. I didn't like the fact that it was all edited completely out of order, and even if they did put it into chronological order, you could have understood it. You could have followed it a little bit better. It would have made for a little bit better storytelling. As it is, the flashbacks serve no purpose. They generally do nothing. They could have served a purpose, and here's how. Lois Lane in this movie, she really doesn't do a lot, but she does go around interviewing people. Why not have those flashbacks happen when Lois is interviewing those people? This would serve two purposes. One, it would really give the flashbacks an actual meaning, and number two, it would make Lois Lane look like a strong journalist. After all, Lois Lane's only contribution in this film is that she gets Superman out of a set of Kryptonian manacles. Let me just check. Yeah, that's pretty much all she does. She doesn't really do anything else. But we'll skip past that. Okay, so the Kryptonians arrive on Earth, everything breaks out into fighting, battles, war, carnage, a scene city of destruction. It was spectacular. Okay, they moved like you'd expect Kryptonians to move. They fought the way you'd expect Kryptonians to fight. It was great. And it went on. And on. And on. And on. And on. In fact, they could have spent the time better telling a bit more story and getting rid of some of the useless subplots in this film than they did waste on the action scenes. Don't get me wrong, the action scenes were brilliant, they looked fantastic, but you have to pick and choose how much are you going to devote to action and how much you're going to devote to story. Don't get me wrong, anybody who is a fan of the DC animated series will know that, you know, this is the first time we get to see Superman unload, so this is probably a gift to them as much as anybody else. Anybody who really wants to see Superman just open up and just open a can of whoop ass and just go ape, this was for them, and I appreciate it. I certainly appreciate it. But you have to temper it with a little bit of judgment here. You have to kind of go, right, let's actually tell the story here. Let's not just waste this hour showing things blowing up and people getting knocked through buildings. As fun as it is, you know, first of all, it might have cut the budget on the movie in half, and second of all, it would have actually given us a better story. But we'll move on yet again. I did a couple of things I didn't like later on in this movie. The odd thing here or there. For example, I didn't like the technological divide in the Kryptonian society. The technological divide, I mean, is that sometimes you would see the information being displayed and it would look like the T-1000 from Terminator 2 having a shit fit. On other occasions, it would look like a solid hologram. I'm not sure how those two technologies can coexist, but there we are. I think that it would have been better to either see Jor-El all in silver or to have a better animation sequence, a more fluid looking animation sequence, especially when you see the shot of Zod talking to Superman. He has it played out in this sort of artsy kind of scenario that really does look very, very good, very, very special, and it's really well done. So I'm not sure how those two technologies coexist. I didn't like Pa Kent's death, and I really don't want to get into talking about the Donna version versus Man of Steel, but for this actual instance where Pa Kent dies, I'm going to. Mainly because in the Donna version of Superman the movie, Clark had absolutely no say in the matter. He had no choice, there was nothing he could do. Glenn Ford's Pa Kent suffers a major heart attack and dies. Superman is faced with human mortality. He's got all the powers and all the abilities to save whoever he can, but he can't stop human mortality. It's a realization. It's the first time Superman really comes face to face with death. Really, it's the first time that he realises that he can't do it all, that he can't save everyone. In this movie, there are a million scenarios as to why that was a stupid idea, a stupid death, and why Clark just stood there with his thumb up his ass, screaming, "No!" Well, you should have done something, you plank! I mean, really and truly, what... he gets the douche gene from his father, clearly. He just stands there and does nothing. Well done. That's another one for you, Jarrell. 3 now. So, moving further along into the film, fighting goes on, fighting goes on, fighting goes on. Finally, Lois Lane you think is going to do something, but actually Neil Hamilton takes over and steps in and saves the day. So once again, Lois only contributes the rescuing Superman from Kryptonian manacles bit. The fight keeps going on, and then it ends up with, and let's get down to it, the neck break scene. I don't have a problem with this scene. I really don't. There's not a lot I have wrong with the scene. All the things that I have wrong with this scene stem from, well, take a look at this. Oh my god, we're gonna die! Or we could just go this way. Ooh, hot dog stand's still open.
Can I have a Frank special with extra onions, please?
I really don't have a problem with Superman killing Zod. After all, Superman has killed before. Superman 2, he killed Zod, Norman and Ursa. And at least in this version, he didn't turn them into mortals, crush his hand to powder, pick him up by the crotch and throw him against a solid wall of ice, breaking every bone in his body and letting him fall into a freezing abyss. He done that with a smile on his face. Then he had a thirst for bloodlust, and then went out to a trucker bar and beat the shit out of a trucker. Superman 3, he kills his evil self. Superman 4, he kills Nuclear Man. In Lois and Clark New Adventures of Superman, he's responsible for several deaths there. Anybody remember Lois Lane's Irish ex-boyfriend? Superman vaporized him, just cooked him until he turned into gas. So Superman has killed plenty of times before. I have no problem with him killing Zod now. He was really up against it. He really and truly felt that he had no other option. So that's Man of Steel. I rate this movie as a 6.8 out of 10. It's better than a 6, but it's not quite a 7. It's not bad, but it's not brilliant. The action is good, but it gets stale. And quite simply put, there are better Superman stories out there. In fact, I'm going to recommend 2 for you right now. I'm going to recommend the DC animated movies Superman vs. the Elite and Superman Unbound. Both movies are damn fine stories. I rate them higher than an 8 out of 10. And they're just a really fun way to kill time. So check them out. Superman Unbound, Superman vs. the Elite. Still to come, I'm going to be talking about Marvel vs. DC in the cinema. See you after this. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Let's Talk Movies. In this segment I'm going to be talking about Marvel vs. DC in the cinema. That's the noise Marvel makes every time DC say they're going to release a new movie. So why then is Marvel doing so well when DC seem to be stuck in the mud? Marvel don't seem to be afraid to offer us anything and everything of the property that they seem to have. They seem to be giving us new movie after new movie after new movie. In fact, it's rumoured that Kevin Feige stated that Marvel are planned up until 2028. What about DC? Well, DC are offering us Batman vs Superman. This movie is 10 years out of date, okay? This movie, we're still hoping it's going to be a good film, but let's be honest here, 10 years ago, we'd have been climbing over each other to get tickets for this film. In the wake of things such as the Avengers, or the Captain Americas, and, you know, all these different Marvel movies that Marvel have pushed out there, this really is leaving us by the wayside, and I'm not sure how interested people are in seeing the guy in the pointy ears or the guy in the red cape yet again. So could they do something about this? Well, yes. DC has a wide range of characters. I would happily go to the cinema and sit through a JSA movie. I would happily go to the cinema to watch a Blue Beetle or Booster Gold movie. That would be fun. I would happily go and watch a Plastic Man movie. There's really not a lot of coming out of DC right now. Marvel just seem to be going over and over and over and giving us more and more and more. Look at it like this. DC gave us Superman Returns. The movie was kind of bland. There wasn't really any story to it. In fact, it's a very forgettable movie. And so DC got scared and pulled the plug. There was no Superman Returns 2, there was no other Superman film, not for at least 8 years. They've done the same thing with Green Lantern. Green Lantern, on the other hand, cost a fortune to make. There was probably too much in it, and there was probably too much going on for anybody's real liking, but again, DC got scared and pulled the plug. Marvel, on the other hand, have a different approach to making these movies. And whilst you can argue that Fantastic Four is technically Fox, if you look at the executive producer, it does say Stan Lee, and to me that says Marvel. So what is the approach difference? Well, they gave us Fantastic Four, and Fantastic Four wasn't really a great movie. So what did Marvel do? Well, they took the movie back, they took it apart, they analysed it, they looked at what went wrong, they put it back together, and then they give us Rise of the Silver Surfer. They've done the same thing with Hulk, and then presented us with Incredible Hulk, but in that instance they did reboot it, sort of. But then again, they were really clever and actually gave us the entire reboot story in the opening credits. We got through everything that we needed to know in the first 30 seconds. They didn't have to sit in the audience and watch another story being told over and over and over. It was covered by the time the credits had finished. They've done the same thing with Ghost Rider and Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. Spirit of Vengeance is 10 times the movie that Ghost Rider is. So why can't DC do the same thing? Why can't DC just fix it in a sequel? I mean, let's be honest here, okay? Some of the decisions that DC and Warner Brothers have made are very, very questionable. Imagine I'm the head of a studio and you're the producer and you come into my office and you pitch Green Lantern to me. Well, okay, the story sounds okay. It sounds like a solid enough movie. Sounds like it's going to be visually impressive. Okay, how much is this movie going to cost? $200 million? Okay, the next sentence I'm about to say is going to rhyme with cluck me, are you clucking kidding me, get the clucking bell out of my office. Come back when you've recovered from your concussion. $200 million is a pile of money. Okay, if you can't make a damn fine movie for $100 million, you're doing it wrong. And yes, you can argue that Green Lantern has a lot of visual effects in it, and is very visually intense. On the other hand, you gotta be realistic and say, well, visual effects are the icing on the cake, not the cake itself. In other words, when you're gonna make a movie, you have to be smart. You cannot spend that amount of money and expect a good return. Okay, they made $220 million, so they were covered. But Marvel's approach seems to be far more civil, far more widespread. They seem to be far more rational. They've given us every numerous character that the comic books have. And whilst, you know, DC are turning around and saying, well, we are giving you a gritty, serious Superman, we've given you a gritty, serious Batman, and now we're going to give you a gritty, serious Batman and Superman. Oh, that's the sound of Marvel riding off into the sunset with their box office ratings. Keep riding. Yeah, you see, at the end of it all, Marvel have turned round and they've rebooted Spider-Man. They've rebooted Spider-Man, and okay, you can say so Sony, but again, look at the executive producer, and you'll see that it is clearly Marvel. So, they've rebooted Spider-Man, and they've given us a new Spider-Man. Well, is Spider-Man 2 going to be any good? Because, let's be honest, Amazing Spider-Man I could have skipped the first hour, let's be honest. The first hour of the movie I could have skipped, but I really enjoyed the second half. So, am I going to enjoy the Amazing Spider-Man 2? Well, we'll wait and see. But until then, I can honestly say that even if it doesn't work, that there will be another Spider-Man movie. I'm confident in Marvel's ability. Whilst DC have given us everything gritty and serious and really, really realistic, Marvel turn around and going, "Psst, our next movie is about a raccoon with a machine gun. And his best friend's a tree." Yeah, Marvel are just going hell for leather. And when you consider that DC own a wide range of characters, if DC doesn't do something pretty special pretty soon, they are going to be left by the wayside. They're already eating dust. Considering that they have Wonder Woman, and they've tried to reboot Wonder Woman, and they've tried to redo it, but they seem to be scared of damaging their property. They seem to be scared of having a strong female lead in one of their movies. Will it work? Well, of course it'll work. Of course, it doesn't come down to the individual. It doesn't come down to the movie. It comes down to the writing and the story and how it is presented to us, the cinema-going audience. So, there you have it. That's my segment on Marvel vs. DC in the cinema. Stop laughing. They are trying. Barely. Anyway, that's it for this edition of Let's Talk Movies. On the next show, I'm going to be asking, does Hollywood make any good sci-fi movies anymore? Don't forget to check out the 2 movies I recommended, Superman vs. the Elite and Superman Unbound. And if Amazing Spider-Man 2 isn't any good, guess what? Spectacular Spider-Man is coming out on Blu-ray. Hoorah! Keep going to the cinema, keep having a good time, and let's keep talking movies. See you again.